let's try this again because the quality was way off on the last one. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count coming at you, and this is your 2026 AEW Revolution post show. Whether you're somebody who enjoys blood and guts or somebody who enjoys surprise returns and debuts or just really good graps, this was the show for you. And it feels as if there was a smorgasbord of different things for you to select from. And we're gonna go all over the place when we break down the show because there was a lot to unpack here. And I kind of want to start from the end and work my way forward. We ended this show with what is going to go down as one of the more violent matches on any type of major scale when it comes to professional wrestling pay-per-views. Coming into this show, Hangman Page, MJF, MJF being the biggest homegrown TNA, biggest homegrown AEW name there is to date, going up against arguably the second biggest homegrown AEW talent there is to date in Hangman Adam Page. We've seen these two lock up on other occasions, but the stakes were extremely high in this time. And when I say that, we talk about Hangman Adam Page prior to this matchup saying, if I lose this match, I can never challenge for the AEW title as long as I live. We've seen this before, and usually when we look at sequels, they usually suck and are not as good as the original. But with now us being in a place where Hangman Page has now put himself in the same predicament as Cody Rhodes. And we all know that once Cody Rhodes lost that match and was unable to challenge for the AEW World title ever again, it felt as if there was a ceiling placed on how high or how far he can go in the company. And hopefully now, and you would think that after that kind of blew up in everybody's face, you would kind of want to stay away from stipulations like that. But I'm hoping that now, with hindsight, and now with Hangman Page seemingly being somebody who is not going to do the leap from AEW to WWE, I hope that we are now in a position where we were able to have the stipulation, but we are now better able to handle it and see something how we're going to be able to play this thing going forward, because you now kind of trapped Hangman Page in a spot where it's like, what is he going to do now? Is he going to be the king of the TNT Championship? Is he going to be somebody who is, having to figure out his way of telling compelling stories that are not going to be surrounded by the AEW title? It's just really interesting now to see where we're going to go. And with Hangman Page being out of the equation and MJF being the AEW World Champion, we are now going to be looking as to who is going to be the next contender for the world title, right? There's no obvious names in the equation now. We all see people fantasy booking as to what is going to be the main event of All In, and multiple different fantasy booking options that we see don't involve MJF. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go forward now. And if you're somebody who isn't a fan of the violence, and I'm kind of somebody who falls in the middle, where it's like the name of the match is Texas Death. So you can't expect it to be some, clinging, PG type of fest. It literally has the word death in the title of the stipulation. I'm not somebody who really enjoys the light tubes or really things that involve glass or syringes, but if you really break down the match and look at it, there's many layers to it, especially with the finish where we saw MJF hang basically Hangman in the same way that Hangman did John Moxley at All In, and how he was able to win his Texas Death matches, and he was somebody who basically lost to his own sword. It's interesting now where we're going to see these two guys in the directions that they're going to go with their careers going forward, because there's many layers. And then you got the moment with the dog collar, which is probably MJF's most famous match. I would think him and CM Punk at Revolution. You got the tribute of that moment. And going forward now, especially with Hangman being out the equation, the baby faces are kind of light. The legitimate baby faces are kind of light on the AEW side. But we did tonight get one big gun when it comes to the babyface side on the AEW roster, and that is the return of the Billy Goat, Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay, we've seen these vignettes over the last couple of weeks where you're hyping up the return of Will Ospreay. We saw different dirt sheet reporters saying that Will Ospreay's return should be soon, but soon meant tonight, and we saw him go right full steam ahead towards Jon Moxley. Him and the Death Riders, if you remember, were the ones to take Will Ospreay out. They were the ones to put him on the shelf. And it's going to be interesting now to see what version of Will Ospreay do we get. Are we going to see a more toned down version of Will Ospreay due to the severity of the injury that he got? Necks are not something that you want to play with. Or we're going to get the same old balls to the wall Will Ospreay that we saw before. He looked bigger. The guy looked good. He looks like a man who has been really taking care of himself since he was recovering from that surgery. We also got some title changes on this card. Two very necessary title changes in my mind. We got the title change of the Trios Championship. We saw Mystico and Jet Speed defeat the Don Callis family, and we saw Bane and Cross defeat Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron for the Women's Tag Team Championship. The necessary one for me was the men's trio one, because if you really look at it, it's kind of funny they hot potato those titles, because it really looks as if Tony Khan didn't want to take the titles off of Jet Speed, but he needed to figure out a way to where we freed Hangman up a bit so he doesn't have to be involved in the trios title scene. So they hot potato the title so Hangman can be freed of him. And then they just brought in Mystico to take his place. And now we got Mystico and Jet Speed as the trios champions. Mystico got the All Elite graphic after the match, which you could tell the guy was super emotional. You feel good for him. And Megan Bane and Cross picking up the championships from Willow and Harley Cameron. If you saw during the pre-show, you saw Willow Nightingale go up against Cross, and after the match, she got a case of the beats, softening her up for this tag team championship match, which gave Willow an out or an excuse to losing it. So not necessarily the end of the world for her. And with her still being the TBS champion, she is in a good place, at least for now. And we saw the way that the show opened, right? The Bucks going up against FTR, and the way that the show closed with Hangman and MJF. Two matches that involve rivalries that we've seen on multiple different occasions in AEW, but it felt as if the stakes were higher due to the personal nature of both matches. In the Bucks match, we saw that FTR involved their family, and we saw that the Bucks, they brought out their kids with them when they did their entrance. That was a really good freaking opener, right? When you look at the history of AEW and the openers of their pay-per-view, and you look at the history of the Bucks in FTR and their matches, it's going to be really hard to find another Bucks in FTR match that you would be able to say was better than the one we got tonight. I think if you look at the tag team scene for the past 15 years, I think it's universal that the four best tag teams in the world have been the Usos, FTR, the Bucks, and the Briscoes. Whichever one you think is the best, that's your own personal opinion, but I think it's pretty universal that those are the four best, at least in my mind, right? And for us to be able to see two out of those four put on the banger that they put on tonight, and closing it out with the return of Cope and Christian, setting up to what in my mind is inevitable, a triple threat TLC match for the tag team championship. Whether they're able to postpone it all the way to All In, or they're going to do it sooner rather than later at Double or Nothing. It feels as if that match is inevitable. And if you're a fan of Edge and Christian, you're excited, but on the other hand, you're like, these guys, are 50 years old and you don't want to see them get hurt. But and it's just incredible the fact that if we look at in different stages of the companies, right? We got the original ones in WWF, WWE, and then we kind of got a little bit of a remixed version of that match in TNA with Team 3D, the Hardys, and the Wolves. And now we're getting another type of remix of that match in AEW. It's just like, man, those three teams, the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian, the fact that they were able, some concoction or mixture of those teams, been able to do it in multiple different companies in multiple different decades is a testament to how great those guys were. But we also got the AEW debut of Ronda Rousey. Now, if you watched it on screen, when it happened, she was showered with boos. But what I'm more interested is this. I only watch AAA now. It's way better than WWE and AEW. What's going on, Carson? AAA is good. I thought their show that they had, what was it, last night? Was it last night or the night before? It was really good. I enjoyed it. But when we saw the debut of Ronda Rousey, and she was showered with boos, what the fuck? They got Ronda Rousey? Yeah. Yeah. Let me break it down to you, buddy. So Toni Storm and Marina Shafir, they had their match. You know, if you've been paying attention to the show, or if you haven't been paying attention to the show recently, they've been involved ever since, you know, ever since even before they had their Grand Slam show in Australia a couple weeks ago. They have been involved in this back and forth feud. Toni Storm, Orange Cassidy, and the Death Riders, right? So we got tonight. We see Marina Shafir going up against Toni Storm. I believe this is their first one-on-one match they had in the pay-per-view. Marina Shafir dominated Toni for the most part, you know, probably 90% of this match. And we see Toni pick up the win with the small package, right? Toni Storm, she's on stage. She's soaking up the victory. And then we see out of the crowd, Ronda Rousey goes into the ring. Ronda Rousey, if you don't know, friends with Marina Shafir in real life. Ronda Rousey, she gestures, you know, she does the come here gesture to get into the ring. Toni Storm gets into the ring. They have a pull-apart brawl. And Marina Shafir is able to sucker punch Toni Storm in the midst of that, right? But what I'm more interested in is this, and maybe this has been announced since I been on camera or not, but I'm curious as to what is going on and what is the arrangement with Ronda Rousey. Because when Ronda was on the screen, you know, they promoted her fight. They mentioned, oh, this is Ronda Rousey. You know, she got a fight against Gina Carano coming up, right? I'm interested to see if this is just a one-off to promote the fight and for her to do something cool with, you know, on screen with her friend for one time, or if this is an agreement where she's going to be on AEW on a semi-regular basis. Because if it's something that she's going to be on there on a semi-regular basis, this is probably poor timing. Because let's just say that's the deal, right? She's going to be in AEW on a part-time basis. She has a fight coming up with Gina Carano. And while I don't think she's going to lose to Gina Carano, there's still a chance that she is going to lose. So let's just say she goes out there and she loses to Gina, and then the next week she has to come on TV and try to perpetrate a badass. It's not going to look good. So I'm more leaning towards that this is something that is a one-off, but who knows? This was a moment that got people talking. I think that outside of what went down in the main event, I think this is going to be the biggest talking point of the show. And it's interesting, to say the least. But yeah, Ronda Rousey was on the show. One of the matches that I think is kind of going to get lost into the fold because of everything else that went down, but was a really good match if you take the time to check it out, if you weren't able to see it, was Andrade and Bandito. Andrade is one of the more interesting wrestlers that I could think of over the last couple of years because we saw guys like Andrade and Aleister Black and Rusev, a.k.a. Miro, be very unhappy with the way things was going for them in AEW should try to sign Gina too. I like her. And the Mandalorian, that would be crazy to see her fight Mercedes since they were both on the show. The difference is I don't even think Gina likes wrestling though. Like, if Gina was interested in wrestling, yeah. I don't think. I gotta watch my words here because it's going to be interesting. So, something I'm I'm going to be kind of vague with this. Something that really is interesting to me is Warner Brothers Discovery, right? It's not about that. So I can see how she's doing it. She got canceled from acting, so I could see her doing it. Yeah. Well, she didn't. Well, she does. She got canceled from the mainstream stuff. She still works with Ben Shapiro, right? And them. So it's interesting, right? Warner Brothers. What's you see me stammering over my words. Just like I don't know how to address this. So Warner Brothers Discovery, they basically put the kibosh to having the Briscoes and Trey Miguel be on their show for saying homophobic things in the past, which is not good. Let me emphasize that. It's not good. But they apologized. Rhonda, if you don't know, said some kind of controversial things about the Sandy Hook incident. If you don't know exactly, Google it. And Gina, as you said, got canceled for things that are controversial as well. So it's just kind of funny how it's just like they allowed Rhonda to get on the show where she said things that could offend people, but they put the kibosh on the Briscoes and Trey Miguel, who also said things that would offend people. Now, different things for different groups of people, but still, it's like weird. It's just like, why is this okay and why is that not okay? But that's another debate. But it's interesting how things work. But let's go back to talking about like Andrade before I was even going to bring this up. So you had Andrade, Miro, and Aleister Black be very vocal about their unhappiness in WWE and the way they were booked and the way that they were used under the Vince McMahon regime. So they went off to AEW. They seemed very enthusiastic about being in AEW. Then the moment Vince McMahon gets taken out of power and Triple H gets the books, they became very much so, it became pretty clear with those three guys that they wanted back in WWE. And it makes sense if you think about it, especially in a case of a guy like Andrade. Andrade, I think the peak of his wrestling career was his run in NXT as the NXT champion, and he was booked under Triple H, and the show was basically surrounding him. He was the focal point of his time as the AEW champion when it was NXT Black and Gold. And at the time, he was married to Charlotte Flair, so it makes all the sense in the world why he would want to go back to WWE at that time period. He goes back to WWE. His marriage doesn't work out. And he's not booked in the way that I'm sure that he wanted to be booked. And now, since he's been back in AEW, I think his first stint in AEW was very mixed. I think that for the most part, he was pretty much a background player or one of the Collision Cowboys for the most part. But now, since he's been back, I think it's pretty clear that at some point, maybe not this moment, maybe not in a week, maybe not in a month, maybe not in 2 months. But it seems abundantly clear that before the end of 2026, that I think that he is going to be in a position to where he's going to be competing for that AEW World title. And I think that now, with the work rate that he's been able to put on, with this new kind of, shtick that he has, with the taking selfies with the women and the putting his number in their phone and all these things, I think that he has something. And I think that his first AEW run, people were more like kind of indifferent. Like they recognize this is a guy who wrestles good. But as we all know, for the most part, that's not the end all be all when it comes to wrestling. I think that most people, yes, depending on your taste, You enjoy good in-ring work, but you also need a little bit more, right? A little bit more of the character work, a little bit more of the charisma. And I think that he's been able to capture that now in this run. So I think Andrade picking up the big win against Bandito, who a lot of people were talking about last year being their wrestler of the year. I think it's going to get lost in the shuffle, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I think that this was a big win for Andrade. And I think this is going to get him closer and closer to potentially being the next challenger for MJF. But that's one of the big talking points. I already mentioned it earlier, the return of Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay, who I think that since he made his debut to the last match that we saw him in AEW prior to the injury, I think he had a good case for the MVP of AEW. Brody King, Swerve Strickland, they put on a solid match. Brody King is somebody who over the last several weeks has been getting a lot of mainstream attention for things that don't have anything to do with professional wrestling, but just from a professional wrestling standpoint, him being put in these positions to go up against these top guys that AEW has, Swerve, MJF, and we see him not pick up the win, but I think him being in the pay-per-view on having a singles match is a win in itself. Being able to go toe-to-toe with Swerve is a win in itself. They were going to do the cinder block spot that we've seen Swerve Strickland do in the past. And at that moment, I thought we were going to get the return of Keith Lee, who we haven't seen in forever due to health complications. But we saw the return of Kenny Omega, who was supposed to be in Japan doing some Street Fighter work. And I guess he was able to get the pass to go back tonight and do this run-in. For me, it's like, damn, well, if you're going to be in the States and have permission to come back tonight, why the hell didn't you wrestle? Well, we see him do the run-in, easily setting up him and Swerve too. Kenny Omega, he is somebody who I've stated on multiple different occasions. I feel as if he should be booked as if the Roman. Is Keith Lee Dragon Lee's brother? Yeah, by marriage. By marriage. Dragon Lee. Former tag team partner of AJ Styles. One half of, what were they calling themselves? AJ Lee. Hey, Carson, I'm going to be at SmackDown on Friday. SmackDown will be in my area on Friday. I will be there. Be there or be square. So hopefully I'll have some things to show you guys while I'm at the show. It's a good show to be at there, right? Jacob Fatu up against Drew McIntyre. And it's the dang, I'm jealous. Have fun. I appreciate it, brother. I appreciate it, brother. Comes to the territory, man. But yeah. But I'm interested to see coming out of this show. The things that I'm mostly interested to see now is what's the role of Ronda Rousey in AEW? What are we going to do now with Hangman Page now since he's been put in a spot where he can't challenge for the AEW title ever again? And where are we going to go with the tag team titles as well, with the return of Edge and Christian? Because there's a lot of things that went down, and it really feels as if with all these things that happened on the show, you could really set up your television for the next 6 weeks easily and not even have to really totally address certain parts of it because you had so many things go down. And now, how are we going to factor in, somebody like Mercedes, who is gone as well? How are we going to reintegrate her into the mix? There's a lot of things going on right now. A lot of things going on in the world of professional wrestling. Tomorrow night, Monday Night Raw, we get the return of Roman Reigns. We see how he is going to respond to CM Punk after CM Punk, told him that he's going to bury him next to his father. This is my favorite part of the professional wrestling calendar because for me, Revolution is usually the best pay-per-view on the AEW calendar. And we're also smack dab in the middle of WrestleMania season. So there's a lot of things going on. A lot of things went down on this show, too. I didn't even mention the fact that Jack Perry won the national championship in that casino battle royal match, blackjack battle royal match to start the show. Roman is going to cook tomorrow. You know that he is definitely going to bring up CM Punk's dog Larry. That is, if there was a way to put that parlay in on FanDuel, that is probably an automatic. Let's kind of sway away from the Revolution for a little bit, and then we can go back a second. What's so interesting to me about that match that we're getting with Roman Reigns and CM Punk. CM Punk is somebody who I think, for the most part, I think everybody can acknowledge is one of the all-time great talkers. Whether you rank him in the top 10, top 15, wherever you rank them, we know that he's in the upper half of top talkers of all time. For me, every time that we have seen him and Roman Reigns interact, since they've been building up this match, I think it's been abundantly clear that Roman Reigns has gotten the better of him. And I think that Roman Reigns, compared to CM Punk, right now is the much bigger star. I think on the mic, he has gotten to the point of where it's like, I'm sitting there watching and thinking to myself, like, man, this guy CM Punk's getting cooked. And I feel like that line that they put in where, he's like, I'm going to bury you next to your father. It's like, it's kind of like they wanted to figure out a way to how can we get a moment where it looks like CM Punk got the better of Roman Reigns and not make it look abundantly clear that we kind of manufactured it. And for me, it's just like, okay, you have to put that line out there because because outside of like something that's so controversial, you're not going to be able to outwit Roman Reigns on the mic. So it's interesting. And I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that match too, because think about this. Both outcomes are interesting because if you have CM Punk win, that's a big high-profile loss for Roman Reigns. And Roman Reigns is at a point in his career of what I like to call those type of guys like made men, where it's like they can lose 10 in a row and it's not really going to matter. But I don't really think that Roman Reigns is going to agree to lose to CM Punk. And if we have Roman Reigns win, it's like, okay, we're going into another phase where Roman Reigns is going to be a part-time champion. And people forget about that when he did that documentary and he talked about that, right? But from like a wrestling standpoint, it's like he's gonna be a part-time. If he wins the title, we're gonna see the title on a part-time basis again. And it's just like, for me, the show on a weekly basis is hit or miss. And lately, it feels like it's been more misses than hits. And when you take the title out of the equation, it's just like you're going to see a lot more meaningless segments going on. And it's going to be interesting because how the show is going to be able to respond when the title isn't around like that. It's going to be, in my mind, it's not something I'm looking forward to because I think it's going to lead to some bad TV. But maybe I'm just being pessimistic. But Dynamite on Wednesday. We already have the no-hold-barred match lined up between Toni Storm and Reyna Shafir, which I think we're going to have some type of involvement with Ronda Rousey again. I think that MJF coming out of that big-time victory against Hangman Page, I think that the guy that they're priming up to be his next challenger is Andrade. Andrade is somebody who's getting a lot of positive reaction, so I think it's a natural kind of fit. And I think with MJF having the ties to Mexico, doing a lot of work in CMLL, I think that that's going to be interesting. But, guys, it's been a late night, a very late night. So I am going to call it a show. Please remember to like the show, hit the like button. I know that a lot of people say that, but it's really helpful if you do hit the like button because it helps spread the show out. Whether even if it's not live at the moment, it helps people see it later on. So hitting the like does help. If you could do that, that would be much appreciated. But guys, I'm Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.